And now, the thrilling conclusion of the Dragon Ball Evolution 100th episode, Part 3, Revenge of the Shit. I'm just kidding. Hey guys, what's up? It's Big Jack Films here, and welcome to the third part thing of the commentary for Dragon Ball Evolution, the 100th episode. We are now on the final chapter of this epic trilogy, which was not planned. And on this episode, on this part 3, we're going to talk about what went on during the production of the final battle. Now, one thing I should point out with the final battle is, which we'll get to, we were originally actually going to have a Cell cosplayer on hand for this episode, but unfortunately, I could not find one in the nick of time. There was one at Anime North, I remember a few years ago, that was really well done, along with sided with a really impressive Frieza cosplay, and I couldn't get a hold of them. Unfortunately, they didn't really feel like doing it, so my other resort was just using animation, which makes sense, because the character isn't really, part of the third dimensional device that was used to bring 18 to the third dimension. Now, as you guys, I will let you guys know that we're gonna have a new intro for the next Big Jack Films review, which is a post-Flash Gordon episode. So look forward to that down the line. I might even release the, intro, sometime down the road, in the next few weeks. But, yeah, basically, the final battle was a lot of fun to shoot. We shot it at Roundhouse Park in Toronto, right by the, Metro Toronto Convention Center, which is right where Comic-Con Fan Expo happened, and we just shot that for a day. BattyAlana came down to do the episode, which, again, guys, go check out her Instagram. Bradley helped us film, and as well, we just kind of shot the shit for that whole afternoon. It was a really fun shoot to do. And thankfully, I had everything planned. I actually had made an animatic, so I knew exactly what was going to happen. That's something you would know, too, is that animatics are really good to kind of get your action scenes across, and sometimes what animatics are basically three-dimensional storyboards, basically storyboards in sort of a sequence form. So you can use storyboards, you can use bits of animation, you can use footage from other films to kind of pad it out to get an idea of what you're doing, but it's a good way to kind of plan big action scenes. Now, what's funny is, this was the last bit of the narrator, the Kyle Herbert narrator, played by Gord, which, again, big thanks to Gord for helping us out with this. But I just thought it would be so funny, because at this point, Disney had just bought in 20th Century Fox, so we were kind of building up to where they were pretty much buying everything, so we have, like, them buying the FBI, and frickin' the narrator is now owned by Disney, and they, like, break in, which is hilarious. I figured he'd be like, find out what happens in the next Dragon Ball. Like, oh god! One of those, I love jokes like that where you don't see it visually, but it's told through the audio. And honestly, looking back, these text things that are like what the episodes did on the show are actually pretty good too. So, anyway, yeah, we kind of just had animatics planned for the final battle, and I kind of knew exactly where to shoot stuff. I always have a shot list too. So that's one of the key things in making big videos like this. Have a shot list and what exactly you're shooting and what you're recording, and then have your animatics planned for action scenes. But yeah, this was the part of, like, this is part of the movie where I'm like, this is stupid. Why would you fuck up the Kamehameha wave? And make it look like something out of The Last Airbender. I swear, M. Night Shyamalan and the writer of this movie, they were pitching notes to each other in between the productions, because you gotta remember, Dragon Ball Evolution and Last Airbender came out about the same time. Like, I think actually the exact same year. Evolution was in April, and I believe Last Airbender was in May. And that is still one of the best battles in the series, is when Gohan patches the torch and fights Cell. Now, the reason people ask me, like, why didn't you put Frieza in there? Because it's, like, so much more better to use since you set it up in part 1. Well, the thing is that Frieza, I felt lately, has been overused thanks to Super. I mean, he showed up in Resurrection F, but then we were all expecting for the Tournament of Power arc for Cell to be a part of that battle, which would have made sense. But instead they got Frieza, and they've now turned Frieza essentially into the Barbossa of Dragon Ball, which I don't mind, because, you know, if you have characters last for this long, they can't always be evil. You can redeem them in some form, especially if they're not pure evil. They're just raised that way. I love that. That kind of, like, zoom in. That's so JonTron-y, that I enjoy. A lot of this was based on when JonTron was, like, took that, Nightshade, the Claws of game and was like, I'm sick of your shit! And he throws it in the garage. But I love the fact that the video is indestructible and it makes my whole room explode. Now, yeah, I love, there's so much good digital effects you can find on YouTube to use, like, smoke and everything. Now, a lot of people point out, your sock is all fucked up on one side. Well, I like to think that's part of the effect of the explosion. It burnt my socks. Now, I'll say this too, if you guys have seen my Let's Talk on Dragon Ball GT, the best arc is the Super 17 arc. I do like that joke. Duplication? Like, any chance I can use Inuyasha jokes, I will. But anyway, so, I can't remember what the fuck I was gonna say. So anyway, yeah, there's so much great digital effects to use. Anyway, yeah, okay, so Dragon Ball GT, there's where I was. I pointed out the Super 17 arc is probably the best arc in the series, and with that said, the Funimation version, which uses music, American music for it, and the Super 17 theme is actually pretty kick-ass. If you want to watch anything from GT, watch that bit. Watch the Super 17 arc. It's actually pretty solid. It's only a few episodes. I always wanted to use a Mr. Popo joke. Mr. Popo is one of the best things in Dragon Ball Abridged. And now this joke with Sesshomaru, because I was watching the scene and thinking, this is like the opening to Inuyasha Movie 1. A lot of Movie 1 references in this, and I think at some point I do want to talk about the movies. As a full-fledged review, if anything. But I love that. And then the music is from, you know, da-da-da-da-da. It's from, I believe, one of the Street Fighter games on Super Nintendo. I can't remember which one. I think it's like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Can't remember off the top of my head. Now, I probably had about maybe 4 or 5 takes of this bit. Now, this bit of me shaking with the glasses coming off, that's right out of the film Downfall. If you guys know of the Downfall parodies, that's basically a little nod to that. I always like to add little nods and Easter eggs to other things that I enjoy. And I do like that. That's something I actually did kind of improv, which is kind of fogging up my glasses and cleaning them up because I knew how bad this was. But it took a lot to kind of not... Like, I was shouting a lot in part 3. It was really bad. And half of it I had to dub because I knew if I'd made a scene, like, my parents would knock on my door and be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I'm like, nothing, I'm just doing a review. I do like that where I'm like, did I read? A little read doesn't happen once in a while, but that's pretty good. And yeah, they completely butchered the point of the Dragon Balls. What's the point if the Kamehameha wave can do it? I don't understand that. You know, that makes no goddamn sense. But yeah, it's seriously, like, what's the point of the Dragon Balls now? You've completely ruined the one thing in the series that is famous for. Kamehamehas do not fucking do that! Again, any chance I can use insult words from the show, I will. Anything with Chris Sabat, so, you know, when he's like, "What Clowder, you bastard," which is one of my favorite moments in the, Battle of Gods movie, which is a great film, by the way. Now, this is my only contribution to talking about Ghostbusters 2016, because that movie is a piece of shit. And I felt that pretty much sums it up. Now, believe it or not, I'm not a big Ghostbusters fan, but I just kind of had to speak out for the community and be like, here's my take on that crappy Ghostbusters reboot. It's really stupid. A little throwback to part 2 when I talked about how Piccolo's mission makes no fucking sense. Yeah, I was really losing it. Now, this is one of the first jokes I came up with when we were in the riffing process with Josh was, ooh, superhero landing, because that's so Deadpool to show up in that scene. Now, I wish I had added green screen and added him into the scene, but I couldn't. That whole, God, fuck you. That's right out of, I think, things like Kid Icarus or I Hate Everything. A lot of I've taken a lot of influence lately from British reviewers, Muller, I Hate Everything, Kid Icarus. They're kind of the next gen of reviewers, the British versions of certain characters. And yeah, his arms don't move like a fucking action figure, which, by the way, the action figures for this movie were fucking awful. Like, apparently you collect them all and you can build, like, a fucking Cyberman or something, or an Ozaru. Like, I don't know if they're, like, really worth much. I didn't buy any of the toys, but I saw them on shelves at the time. They were awful. But this is the part where I broke. This is where, how much further can you go with this in terms of fucking it up? So me just, doing that, I love that. Going looking down, one of my favorite moments in terms of breaking, it was actually breaking me watching this several times, especially doing this review. So, it was just kind of, I think I filmed all the live segments in a day. and that was mostly done kind of while I was doing recording. I have different ways of doing reviews. Sometimes I'll record the audio portions first, put the clips in so all the hard stuff is out of the way, and then the live segments are a lot easier to put together. But sometimes I'll do it all in one big take in terms of the clip parts and everything. Now, doing that, it's more consistent, but because if you're on a time frame and you have to get these done as soon as possible, sometimes you have to switch between different audio, so recording or doing it all in one take. And yeah, this is one scene I actually think is a pretty powerful scene in Dragon Ball when Goku realizes he was the Ozaru when Vegeta shows up. Now, when it comes to watching the Saiyan Saga, I would watch the Funimation dub, but it doesn't have the consistency and nostalgia as the Ocean dub. When I watch Dragon Ball Z, I'll start the first 2 seasons with the Ocean dub, and then I'll go directly into the original Funimation dubs. Now, doing that is a bit more tricky. For me, I would love to just, like, rebuy all... People say, like, what are the best versions to buy of Dragon Ball Z in terms of the show to watch it how it originally was when we were kids? I would recommend getting actually the original VHS and DVDs because they have the original recordings. They're not altered for the orange box sets, which I have because they're a little cheaper to obtain. But that's the only thing with, like, the original VHS and DVD releases is that they are really expensive now in the market because they're out of print. But yeah, so this whole thing makes no fucking sense, unfortunately. So basically, when we were shooting the final battle, it was kind of really improv. I think we shot, like, for about an hour of just the solo stuff, and then BattyAlana showed up. And again, she's such a great person to work with, and she was such a real sport shooting all that stuff. But it was funny, because we did get a couple of reactions from people, like, in the park. It was like, what are they doing? And what's great is that Roundhouse Park eventually has become sort of a battleground for the majority of our reviews. I love this line from Eric Val, who does Trunks. It's like just one of the best angry lines. Oh, this is like straight Arnold from Commando making silly faces. Now again, any chance, I knew because it was the 100th episode, I had to make some references to the Kong reviews, one being the 96 Kong, because honestly, as much as I wish they had used that first draft in 2005, I don't think it would have been ready for 1996. If you had, again, I think the pushback was a good idea, because then we wouldn't have gotten Lord of the Rings, but if they had used that first draft, I think it would have been a lot better. Now, funny enough, this movie was made on $30 million. You know what else was made on $30 million? One of my new favorite films of all time, Ridley Scott's Legend. No joke. One of the most beautiful movies of all time was made on $30 million. You could say that's an inflation thing, but I'm sorry. When that movie was made on the same budget and could provide much better results, it just makes this movie so much more worse. So, basically, yeah, the Roundhouse Park in Toronto is pretty much our go-to place for final battles in this next season. We want to push it around a little bit to different locations, but that is sort of the high ground of most battles. The Power Rangers review, this review, and then, obviously, minor spoiler, the season finale will take place at Roundhouse Park as well. That is until this lockdown is over and we can go back to con lives again. And yeah, what the fuck? What the fuck? Is this the only fight scenes where we're gonna get in this movie? Yeah. Now, one thing I'll admit, one thing this movie actually was pretty decent. The score by Brian Tyler, I believe that's his name, is actually pretty solid, as well as the song Rule by Ayumi Hamazaki. I love Ayumi Hamazaki's music, going all the way back to, again, the first Inuyasha movie when she wrote No More Words, but Rule is actually a good track and really fits the tone of Dragon Ball. And then, yeah, this whole final battle, okay, yeah, the final battle's fucking awful, but the music actually does the job quite well. I think if it didn't have this music, it would have probably suffered a lot more than what it already is. Like, this is awful, but the music kind of makes it work, and I gotta give Brian Tyler credit that the score is actually pretty solid to the Dragon Ball Evolution movie, given what he was given. Do I wish for more Bruce Falconer work? Absolutely. Hell, I would love to see release the Falconer cut. Put a Bruce Falconer score in and kind of recut the movie. I'd love to see that. Now, I had done maybe 10 takes of this because I was trying to figure out the best thing, and it was gonna have like flashes of different like angles and different colors, but I was running out of time to do it all. And yeah, I was just like, nah, fuck that. Now this line where I'm just like, this movie could suck my dick, and I'm just going Super Saiyan, this is based on when Vegeta goes completely cuckoo on Namek when he realizes all the Dragon Balls are taken. But it's actually a nod to a very old series from YouTube called Alternate Reality Dragon Ball Z, which I remember watching in high school. It was pre-DBZ Abridged, but it was the original, by a guy named Gozar. And I don't know what he's doing now, but Gozar, Alternate Reality Dragon Ball Z was actually pretty solid, even though it was made on, like, Windows Movie Maker. So that whole rant was actually based on his reaction to Dragon Ball Evolution and doing it as Vegeta. Now, right here, fuck it, they don't remember apparently. That's from Mauler's review of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and I love Mauler. And any chance I can make a Mauler joke, I will. Now, I love using that term for building up a cinematic universe or franchising. I call it the movie suffers Marvelitis, meaning like it's trying to be a Marvel movie. Now, this was an actual interview when the movie came out on the old Reels channel, which used to do like fan reactions to movies. They were the first ones to get coverage on Indiana Jones and Crystal Skull, which was, a lot of people hated it. But this was an actual interview at the time where James Marsters, who plays Piccolo, was actually trying to convince that they were going to do a Dragon Ball Z, which never happened. But he was so enthusiastic, he thought, hey, the first one wasn't that good, but we can do better. But it was just, yeah, it was kind of funny that he promoted it. And Jimmy Chung just looks like, yeah, we're not doing that. Now, this whole bit I love is just me kind of losing it and just taking all these different weapons. So I have all these props, I collect props, so I try to use the best ones. So things like a knife, which was an Assassin's Creed dagger. I used a Nerf gun, a Maverick, and a toy pistol. Well, a cap gun, but it worked really well, and I love that whole bit just saying Dragon Ball PP. Because that's what it is, it's fucking PP. It's a nod to Angry Joe when he said Alien Covenant sucks PP, but it's also a nod to Dragon Ball. I think there is a thing called Dragon Ball P. Yeah, the writer actually did apologize for this, that's why I made a nod in part 2. But as we get to kind of the central core of this, one of the things that I did talk about, one thing I knew that I had to stand out with this review, among others, was to kind of explain why I hate this movie for a different reason than most others. Because most people who review this say, it's a terrible adaptation, it's like, oh, it fucks up this, it fucks up that, it fucks up this, it's a piece of shit, it's awful, it's Transformers, blah, blah, blah. But no, for me, this has a much more deeper impact looking back 10 years later of why this movie sucked, and it's more of a personal reason, which we'll get to in a sec. But yeah, I do point out, Zack Snyder would do a really good Dragon Ball Z movie. I think he could get the job done. But to the point, basically, I hate this movie for more personal reasons, and that's because this final speech at the end that kind of sums everything up, is how I feel. And this is actually, a lot of this came from actual truth at the time. I was really in a bad place in my life, and the show was my only kind of sanctuary. And it was real, that's why the show is so impactful to me. I watched it when I was probably started at 8 years old, and then it transitioned me into adulthood, and a lot of this is coming from a real personal level. So this is actually me talking, this isn't my character. And it's why this movie sucks. They failed to get the key part of why I enjoyed the show. That's the characters. The characters do not work in this movie. And you have so many great characters, and clearly, like, that's why I actually do enjoy the filler, how I like the first bit of Super, because they treat it like a sitcom. It becomes the show Friends. And I don't know why, just see a mashup of Dragon Ball Z and Friends, that would be fucking awesome. But, yeah, it's that, and it's also why I wanted to tell the story in between, to kind of explain how connected I was to these characters, that it's to the point where they were there with me, and therefore I gotta be there for them, despite them being fiction. And it just kind of works. So it's also because, again, all these stories I wanted to tell were back when I was 10 writing this shit. And again, very personal, very personal. I know I keep saying that, but that's all it is. Now, a lot of this does also come from an inspiration from, like, Nostalgia Critic reviews, where he talks about some real personal stuff and how deep a movie can be bad for a lot of reasons. So this comes from that. But it does lead to the eventual point that the ending has it where these characters are still here for me no matter what. And another thing I wanted to give a big credit to Bruce Falconer, because I think the score in the English dub actually did help a lot immensely. And he sadly missed with the Funimation stuff. And this music, I think the music's called, I can't remember what it's called, like sad music or sad theme. but it's used for things like when Gohan and Goku are having a bond with each other or something. It's one of the best tracks Falconer wrote, and it's good for relaxation, but it's really good for emotional moments. Like, I really enjoy Bruce Falconer's work in the Funimation dub. And I'm really glad that they kept it in the orange boxes, because that would have been a drag. Why they didn't keep it in the first 2 seasons, I have no idea. I think it was a legal issue, because I think at that point Falconer had left the series. If you want to watch somebody really talk about Dragon Ball in depth, pun intended, go check out that show, Dragon Ball In Depth, by I think Geekdom 101, I think is his name, I can't remember. But he's probably the best Dragon Ball YouTuber outside of TEAMFOURSTAR and Masako X. They are worth us checking out. Now, again, I actually did try to reach out to some of the members of TEAMFOURSTAR to voice characters, but again, they were actually really too busy to help out. Same with the Funimation actors. Now, this is all from the teaser trailer, this footage, which I actually luckily have. That teaser trailer is kind of hard to find now, because half of it, the movie isn't finished in this, and again, Piccolo was like white and shit. Now, this bit where I pretty much am about to blow it up and it kind of disappears, that's right out of Resurrection F when Vegeta beats the crap out of Frieza and says, "Don't even think about resurrecting again." And one of my favorite shots, visual, like, effect shots that I liked is where the DVD just kind of takes off out of the room and flies downstairs. Now, that was done with 2 different shots. I would first throw the DVD to the wall, and then I would go outside of my room and throw it to the side, and then make sure that in between the cuts, to show that it's still levitating, make it look like it took off. And it's a really clever way to make things essentially fly really fast, is if you basically intercut between and stuff. I love the jump cuts here, how it disappears. But that's the shot right there. Basically, midway through flight, I'd cut in between. And that's just the DVD on a green screen on wires that I did. Now, that line where it's like, "That's playing dirty" movie, that's right out of the third Inuyasha movie, where Shishomaru takes off during the battle. And again, a little nod to when Piccolo did the superhero landing, I do a superhero landing. But yeah, so this whole battle scene was fantastic to work on. Yeah, we got a couple of stares, and then eventually people started to realize, yeah, we were just doing a Dragon Ball thing. And we did get like a couple people shouting, "It's over 9,000!" And I'm like, okay. I do want to put out a blooper reel at some point, because there's a couple of great bloopers in this episode. And one thing I want to give a major thank you is to the wonderfully talented, congrats on 1,000 subscribers, JTISREBORN. You do an excellent Cell. Now, when I was casting, again, I reached out to people like TEAMFOURSTAR. I reached out to the original actor who played Cell. I also reached out to, who's the one that does the Cell and Kermit videos? Unfortunately, they were all unavailable. So I told Sean, JTISREBORN, about it, and he said, "I'll do it." I'm like, okay, well, send me a test of what you can do. And his voice came out so fucking well. I'm like, okay, you're Cell. He does it so well, it's kind of scary, honestly. And it's funny, too, because as a kid, I always thought Cell was also the voice of Plankton, which is hilarious. So I'd love to see a scene with, like, Cell and Plankton talking. Sean, if you can make that, can you do it like a skit of Cell and Plankton just going somewhere for the day? I'd love that. Now, thankfully, with a lot of the Cell footage, is that I use the majority of stuff from the Cell games arc, because what's great is there's several shots in that episode that have Cell on blue screen, on a blue skyline. Now, most of it is mostly blue due to the coloring in the digital process, but what's great is that it actually allows you to do chroma key either, and since Cell is green, it makes it a lot easier. Now, this fight scene, I would just basically have Bradley track me as I'm just punching in the air and doing kicks, speed up the footage, and then add Cell in the foreground. It's pretty easy stuff to do these kind of fight scenes where you're fighting cartoon characters. And yeah, I really beat myself up. In fact, this was the last episode to feature the original Big Jack Films Black Jacket, which since then has been retired to the wardrobe department. And here's BattyAlana as Android 18. God bless her soul. She's one of the best actresses I've ever worked with. And she nails 18 so goddamn well. Guys, go check out her Instagram. We're hoping to work with her down the line in the future. I know right now she's kind of, we're all on break because of this lockdown, but God, she's such a great talent. A great look of 18. She does it so goddamn well. And she also does an amazing impression of her. It's actually kind of unreal. Like, when I was acting with her, at that point 18 was there, and I felt like, okay, we're gonna make this work. And so again, when we knew that Cell and her were gonna interact, we had to kind of put in some sort of continuity-driven writing, and I always like this stuff, writing it like it's a Dragon Ball episode. Now, funny enough, after we shot this, she was such a good sport at this, doing all the physical stunt work, which she did herself. We actually ended up giving her a gift. We got her the whole episode. We made it on a VHS case with a VHS cover, but then we also bought her a brand new cosplay, a new commissioned cosplay of 18 for her, which is fantastic. So hopefully to see that down the line, Alana, if you're watching this, BattyAlana, go definitely do that cosplay. It'll be fantastic. Now, I love this. This is, again, a lot of this stuff is right out of the Super 17 arc where 17 does encounter 18 and Krillin ends up dying. So a lot of this is based on when Krillin died. And basically shot for shot, frame for frame. In fact, we used a lot of that in the animatic. Now, funny enough, a lot of people were like, wait, what about that shot in the teaser where you're like screaming at your lungs like Wolverine in X-Men 3? I'm like, we literally shot that just for the trailer. We were doing this scene, and I'm like, you know what'd be great? Let's get a shot just for the trailer. And they're like, okay, so we shot that, and it was fantastic. Now, if you're wondering why she's able to remember this, it's because she has the memory banks from that 18, which is cool. So, she was such a good sport shooting this, really well done, and thankfully a lot of her shots were very well spared. So we shot all her coverage, and then afterwards she went home, and we shot the rest, which was great. So, again, this was the last time we used that jacket. That jacket had been with me for over 10 years. It was actually a gift from my grandmother before she passed away, and I've used it on my shows. But it just kind of just ran out its course. Its zippers were getting busted. It was getting torn to shreds. And it was just about time we retired it. So that's why we have a new leather jacket. Now, yes, all of this is shot-for-shot remake of when Goku went Super Saiyan for the first time. Now, when I was a kid, and seeing that on TV when it first aired, it blew my fucking mind. What a great scene to look back on in the history of Dragon Ball. So what we did was, I just basically had the scene in the original cut, in the rough cut form, in the animatic, and we just matched it frame for frame, shot for shot, and it was just fun to do this. But a lot of people were giving me stares when I was doing this scene. I was just kind of like doing this solo, and then some of this was footage of thunderstorms in Toronto from YouTube. I love the floating rocks. Floating rocks was actually hard to find. I had to basically take a shot of rocks falling and flip it upside down, but it came out really well. And yeah, so it was just me going Super Saiyan, or basically sort of a Werekong superhuman hybrid thing. It's basically me finally being able to unlock my true power, which had been laid dormant for over 15 years in the backstory. And it uses the Werekong powers to kind of help boost it up, essentially. Somebody actually had asked about that, the Werekong powers, if that would ever come back. Well, it sort of was able to absorb and incorporate into this. So basically, my character does have sort of a Saiyan origin without being Saiyan. He's still human. Now, the shouting. This is actually me shouting at the top of my lungs, and I took some notes and references and research from when the Funimation guys were dubbing and interviews about it, and it does destroy your lungs. It actually really does. And doing that, I actually just went into a small room and I just screamed at the top of my lungs. And in fact, I think I popped a blood vessel doing some of that stuff in my forehead, and that had to be took a while to heal up. But it really fucks your lungs up if you scream that hard. So that was actually me screaming. Now, this is great. So when Cell spits on me, we had some like green goo makeup stuff. So I had Bradley on the side. I set up the camera and I would say, okay, Bradley, 3, 2, 1. And I would snap my fingers and he would throw it at me. And we did about 3 takes. But again, that's one of the reasons why the jacket also was done, because it got the goop on it. And, yeah, so just basically, this is, again, off the Cell saga when Gohan's just pretty much walking towards them. Straight out of that. A lot of this is basically a mix of the Frieza battle and the Cell battle, all rolled into one, which are some of the best in Dragon Ball. I would do more Majin Buu stuff, but I haven't watched much of the Buu saga. I think, like, once Buu showed up, I actually kind of stopped watching it, in terms of the, when it was originally running. But I've gone back and watched it. It's a pretty decent set of stories. And yeah, the blood effects are great, because again, I had to go in and like, go into a bathroom and just kind of put the blood on me, and I came out and people were looking at me and I'm like, don't ask. So again, Thomas LOVECCHIO as Gablor, an amazing voice work. Can't think of anybody else to portray the role of Cell, or the role of the Dark Lord. He does it so well. Anytime I need audio, I'll just get him to send it to me. And yeah, again, JT was doing so well. We actually have a whole bunch of bloopers of him doing lines, which we'll include in the reel at some point. It's pretty impressive stuff. And again, because Cell was in the sky, it was a lot easier to do. Now these shots were actually of, I would basically take a mat of the skyline of Toronto that had a blue on it, and then put the blue back in, but then put the Dragon Ball background in so it looks like Cell was in the sky powering up. And it actually works pretty well. Now again, all this is basically the Cell saga when Gohan realizes he fucked up, except there's no Goku to stop the popping, the big DeviantArt Cell, as I put it. Now, I shot this, some of the stuff we had to reshoot, or basically add in. We couldn't go back to Roundhouse Park. So, thankfully, across the street from my house, there's a really nice graveyard that actually does match the terrain of the park. And because of the lighting and everything, I was actually able to fake it to make it look like it was actually part of the same park. And it worked pretty well, actually. Now, I love using the digital effect of kind of the glow. One of my favorite effects to use in my editing software. But it came out really well. And again, this is all Christopher, HEWY TOONMORE, BAETEEN, Gord, Eric RICEDUKE. They all provided amazing voices, impressions of the characters, and it came out really well. Eric does an amazing Teen Gohan. And Gord even does a great Krillin, which is fantastic. So this is just kind of them speaking to me. This is it's funny because we had done this prior to The Rise of Skywalker, which kind of did the same thing when Rey speaks to the Jedi, so it was kind of a precursor. Now, one thing I definitely wanted to use in this was the track, Spirit, I think it's called. I can't remember what it's called, where it's like Gohan becomes Super Saiyan 2 for the first time. But what's great is that TEAMFOURSTAR had kind of done the same thing. They did a cover. I didn't want to use the cover. And because my show mostly relies on music using saxophones, I actually found an instrumental version of the track Spirit. And it had an amazing saxophone cue to it, which sounded incredible and matched perfectly with the show's tone. Now, when we did this final battle, it was a mix of the Gohan Cell final battle, and a lot of the angles are actually from the final battle between Sailor Moon and Queen Beryl in the Sailor Moon anime. We tried to match that shot for shot as well. It's pretty much a loving tribute to all animes. This I love, matching the music to where she says, "I got you." Such a great emotional moment at that point. But it was just kind of fun to do all this stuff and have, like, you know, people there to kind of provide, and thankfully there's some great green screen animation on YouTube that provided for this to make it look like they were all there with me. I did want to end it with Kamehameha, motherfucker, because that's just the only way you can kill this fucking movie. And, yeah, we actually did burn it. We did burn the DVD. Here's how it worked. I basically went out and shot it on my front lawn with a little grass area. I took a grinder to the DVD with the DVD in it, cut it in half, sprayed it with some flammable liquid, and then set up the camera, and then lit it on fire and dropped it. And I think we did about 2 takes of it. But at that point, the entire DVD was pretty much, it's nothing but crap. It's melted plastic. It's awful. And it's, again, it's supposed to be a nod to Sailor Moon, where it's like, yeah, moon dusted. But we lit that thing on fire, and I still have that, and for some reason, I want to frame it. Say, here lies the worst anime of all time, and just, I don't know, if I ever gave it away and got it framed, I'd probably have it signed. I'm not too sure. I'm not that big into YouTube yet. And I know I just, at the end, when I lost all my energy, is that 18 would catch me like an angel. It's fucking amazing. Just the poetic of it is great. And again, it's sort of also a nod to Avengers, when Tony Stark falls down and Hulk wakes him up. He's like, okay, there's a shawarma down the road. I mean, I like the Marvel movies, but I just sort of use nods to them very sparingly. But the one joke I knew I had to make was that, yeah, there's a Burger King down the road, and cut to an actual Burger King commercial for Dragon Ball Z action figures and part of the kids' meal line. And which I remember as a kid, when I was in the States watching Dragon Ball Z, Burger King had this ad where this guy dressed as Goku, who actually looks a little better than Justin Chatwin, is just flipping around the Burger King, and the manager guy's like, here for Dragon Ball Z, and it's like the people who are doing the merchandising and marketing had no idea how the hell to market it. They didn't know what Dragon Ball was, and they just said, let's just make shit up. And it's like, okay, it's just the show. See, I'll admit the manager's probably the only one who actually knows about the show. So he's like, okay, I'll do this commercial. And I used to have some of those toys. I had the Frieza and I had the Gohan, and the Frieza, I actually pretended as a kid when I had the action figures, I used it as Mecha Frieza. Now, thankfully, when I was doing this, again, Super was just coming around to its finale, and the Meredith McCoy doing 18 here actually came out really well with this scene where she meets Trunks, so I actually was able to match it pretty damn well. And the music was great. I wanted to, at some point, use Chala Head Chala, so I used a cover from the first Dragon Ball movie, Battle of Gods. Actually, I can't remember which movie it was, like 18th, 19th, I can't remember how many fucking movies there are. But again, this ending was kind of like thrown into sort of a, you know, here's how it all kind of goes down backstory-wise, and that eventually these characters would come back. And this is all supposed to be in the past. And then here is sort of like the present time prior to, I guess, the show starting, essentially. So I guess this stuff happens around 2012, 2011, I guess? Now, thankfully, Dr. TERAWATT had, Dr. TERAWATT was able to come in and do some stuff, and I actually was able to use footage from one of his vlogs by asking him a question that I could incorporate into the video, and that was actually a really smart move. I just asked him a question, which he used to do vlogs where he'd ask questions, and he answered it, and it worked out pretty well. So I knew anytime I needed to explain some technobabble, I would just get the doc to do it. And now what's great is the audio of kind of her rising out and kind of that angel-y heaven kind of choir is actually from an animated film called The Little Engine That Could that HEWY TOONMORE did review. Really great short film by Universal, but the music's great in that, so I just knew I had to use that at some point. Because just, the music's really good in that. I don't know why they never released it. Now this last shot of me going, you know, hello Lazuli, welcome back, that is right out of King Kong Lives. I'm not gonna lie, when Linda Hamilton's like, hello Kong, welcome back. And I just knew that's kind of a good way to end it. It was a good way to end the episode. It's just right there, plain and simple, and how to end it. I originally did have a line, but I kind of forgot about it, so we just kind of kept it silent, which I felt was a little bit more anonymous, so people would be like, is she good? Is she evil? We have no idea. And it'll be later explained in a future review series of me covering a certain series of movies about robots. Which, again, the post-credit scene was really fun, too, because, again, it was planned ahead of time, and I had actually gotten Sean to do recordings. Now, I just love, there's a shot that comes up here is where Cell basically falls in, and it's hilarious. But yeah, we are setting up for Terminator, to review the Terminator movies. I don't know when exactly we're going to get to it, but thankfully we have a story, we have sort of a plot outline, but we don't have a script yet, and we're waiting to basically finish this season up before we can really get work on the next season. But yeah, it was just kind of like, we have that planned, we're going to review all 6 films. I'm not going to do the Star Connor Chronicles, it's a bit too much, but it is planned. We are building up to the return of Skynet, essentially, and how it's going to tie in with the show itself. And again, I love these shots of Gablor on the throne. It's just a lot of photoshopping. This was just, basically, we have an actor in a chair on green screen matched to the audio, which came out really well, by the way. And yeah, the stuff with Cell all beaten up came out really well, and him explaining things. We just kind of had to pretty much have a plot line for future episodes, which, again, we are planning. They are coming. We're going to get to Terminator at some point. I promise you. I know a lot of people were asking about that with my Jurassic World reviews and everything, but we're getting to it. And if you guys have any other episodes or stuff you want us to do commentaries on, let us know in the comments. We're welcome to do these for like weekly episodes or weekly videos on Thursdays if you want. We might take a break for a week and maybe post some other stuff, but yeah, let us know in the comments below. And again, guys, thank you all so much for watching the 100th episode. It came out really well, and we hope you enjoyed it later, and we might get to 200 episodes. So until the next video, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys later. This is Big Jack Films signing off saying, this movie sucks. Later.